I didn't end my engagement in a screaming match. There was no plate shattered, no dramatic exit where someone chased me down a hallway. I ended it sitting on the leather couch in a therapist's office, hands folded in my lap, while my fiancé explained, calmly, clinically, that I was never the woman he truly wanted. The room smelled faintly of lavender and tissues, the kind of space designed to make people feel safe enough to tell the truth. And he did. He told it so easily that for the first few seconds I wondered if I'd misheard. "You're boring," he said, crossing his legs, looking straight at the therapist, not at me. Boring. The word landed softly, almost politely. Not an insult thrown in anger, not said to hurt, said like a conclusion he'd reached a long time ago. I sat there, still, listening. He talked about my life the way someone reviews a product they've already decided not to buy. My job, my routines, my weekends. The way I like to spend Sundays watching football with my brother. The way I didn't crave constant excitement. The way I was predictable. Then he said the part that changed everything. He admitted he'd proposed to me because he was 34 and running out of time. Not because he couldn't imagine life without me. Not because he loved the way I made him feel safe. Not because he wanted to grow old with me. Because his friends were married. Because his mother kept asking about grandchildren. Because Instagram was full of pregnancy announcements. Because he didn't think he could find someone better fast enough. I was a solution, a deadline decision, a safe bet. The therapist nodded, pen moving across paper, like this was all part of a normal process. When he finally turned to me and asked how hearing all of this made me feel, I stood up. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was clear. "I'd like to end this session," I said. Then I looked at him, and this engagement. He stared at me like I'd just broken some unspoken rule, like honesty was allowed, but consequences weren't. That moment, the quiet one, before the fallout, was the exact second I realized something important. Love doesn't sound like settling. Commitment doesn't feel like panic. And if someone tells you they chose you because time was running out, believe them. Because that truth doesn't unring itself, and it definitely doesn't make a marriage. We didn't meet in some cinematic storybook way. No sparks across a crowded room. No dramatic coincidence. No moment where the world tilted and everything suddenly made sense. We met because life overlaps sometimes. A mutual friend's birthday. A crowded bar, loud music, cheap drinks. He stood next to me at the counter complaining about how long the line was, and I remember thinking he seemed easy to talk to. Not flashy, not smooth, just comfortable in his own skin. That comfort was what pulled me in. At 31, I wasn't chasing fireworks anymore. I'd had those relationships, the ones full of intensity and chaos and emotional whiplash. I wanted something quieter, something steady. Someone who showed up when they said they would. He did. Our first few dates were simple. Dinner, walks, sitting across from each other asking real questions instead of performing. I told him about my job in accounting like it wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. Numbers made sense to me. Order made sense to me. I liked that. I liked that he didn't pretend to be someone else. 2 years together passed without any major explosions. We lived separately, technically, but practically, he was at my place most nights. He had a drawer in my dresser, a toothbrush in my bathroom, his shoes by the door. We fell into routines quietly. Weeknights meant cooking something easy. Sundays meant football with my brother, me on one end of the couch, him on the other, arguing over plays like it was tradition instead of habit. I didn't think of it as boring. I thought of it as safe. I made good money, $85,000 a year. Not rich, not struggling, stable. I never saw that as a flaw. He, on the other hand, worked freelance as a graphic designer. Talented, creative, but inconsistent. Some months were fine. Others barely covered expenses. He insisted on contributing equally, even when it didn't make sense. Pride, maybe, or insecurity. I never pushed. I covered more. Rent, utilities, groceries. Not because I was trying to control anything, just because it was easier. Looking back, that dynamic mattered more than I realized. The proposal came 6 months ago. Not a grand public thing. Just the two of us, sitting in my living room, takeout containers on the coffee table. He'd been quiet all evening, nervous. When he pulled the ring out, I cried. Not because it was extravagant. It wasn't. But because I thought it meant certainty. Because I thought it meant we were choosing each other, deliberately, without hesitation. He said all the right things. About partnership. About building a life together. About the future. I believed him. The wedding planning started fast. Venues, deposits, a photographer, his mother asking questions that sounded like suggestions but felt like deadlines. My name started appearing next to his in conversations that assumed permanence. Then, about a month ago, something shifted. He started getting critical, small comments at first, about my job, about my routines, about how predictable my life was. Why didn't I want to travel more? Why didn't I push harder for bigger goals? Why was I content? Contentment apparently bothered him. He was the one who suggested couples counseling. Preventative maintenance, he called it. Better communication before the wedding. It sounded reasonable. Responsible, even. I agreed. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't resistant. I thought we were protecting something we both valued. I booked the therapist he recommended. Dr. Reynolds. $200 a session. Leather couches. Soft lighting. A space designed for honesty. I walked into that office believing we were there to fine-tune a partnership. I didn't know I was about to hear a confession, one he'd been sitting on for a long time. And once it was spoken out loud, there was no pretending it hadn't been there all along. After we booked the counseling session, nothing technically changed. That was the strange part. We still texted good morning, still ate dinner together, still slept on opposite sides of the same bed like we always had. From the outside, it looked stable, almost calm. But something had shifted underneath. Like a hairline crack you don't notice until the pressure starts to build. He started watching me differently. Not with anger, not with affection, with evaluation. I'd catch it in small moments. The pause before he answered a question. The way his eyes lingered when I talked about work, like he was measuring whether my ambition matched some invisible standard he hadn't told me about yet. One night, I suggested staying in and cooking. He sighed, not dramatically, just enough to register. "We always do this," he said. I laughed it off at first. "Since when is that a crime?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I just thought, maybe we do something more exciting." Exciting. That word started showing up a lot. More exciting restaurants, more exciting trips, more exciting conversations. It wasn't that he wanted something specific. It was that whatever I offered never quite qualified. I began replaying moments in my head, wondering when I'd unknowingly failed some test. Had I talked too much about my routines? About liking my job? About being okay with a quiet life? Once, while watching football with my brother, he leaned over and said, half joking, "Do you ever get bored of this?" I looked at him. No, why would I? He didn't answer right away. Just nodded like he'd confirmed something. Another time, he asked why I wasn't more focused on leveling up my career, why I wasn't aiming higher, why I seemed settled. That word again. I reminded him I was doing well. I liked my work. I liked my life. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's good," he said. "I just don't want us to get stuck." U.S. He kept framing it like a shared concern, but the critiques were always aimed in one direction. At night, lying in bed, I started noticing how restless he was, scrolling through his phone, lingering on social media longer than usual, watching stories from people I didn't know, weddings, baby showers, gender reveals. Once, I glanced over and saw him staring at a photo of one of his friends holding a newborn. He locked his phone quickly, like he'd been caught doing something private. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, too quickly. "Just tired." But the tension didn't feel like exhaustion. It felt like urgency. His mother's voice grew louder in the background of our lives. Not literally, but an influence. Casual comments turned into pointed ones. "So, when are you two setting a date? You know men don't get any younger either." "I just don't want him waiting too long." Waiting for what? I started feeling like time itself had entered the room with us, sitting quietly in the corner, watching. The counseling appointment loomed closer, and instead of relief, I felt a low-grade dread I couldn't explain. Not fear, not panic. Just the sense that something was about to be said out loud. I told myself I was overthinking it. We were engaged. We were planning a wedding. People didn't do that if they weren't sure, right? But certainty doesn't usually feel like being reviewed. And love doesn't usually feel like you're on a deadline you didn't agree to. I didn't know it yet, but the counseling session wasn't going to fix anything. It was going to expose it. The counseling office was exactly how I imagined it would be. Neutral, calm, soft lighting, 2 leather couches facing each other, a box of tissues placed just close enough to be reachable. Dr. Reynolds sat across from us with a notepad on his knee, reading glasses perched low on his nose, the expression of a man who had heard everything and judged very little. I remember thinking we'd walk out of there with a list of communication tools and a sense that we were being responsible adults. We sat down. I folded my hands in my lap. He leaned back slightly, ankle resting on his knee, looking almost relieved, like someone finally given permission to say something he'd been rehearsing for a while. Dr. Reynolds smiled gently. "So," he said, "what brings you both in today?" He didn't hesitate. "I love her," he began. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten, not because the words were wrong, but because they felt like a preface. "I just don't like the way that sounds," he continued, glancing briefly at me before turning back to the therapist. "But I need to be honest." I stayed quiet. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear it, whatever it was, without shaping it for him. Dr. Reynolds nodded. "Go on." "She's boring." The word landed again, heavier this time. I blinked once. That was it. No reaction beyond that. I wanted to hear the full version, not just the headline. Dr. Reynolds didn't flinch. He wrote something down, then looked up. "Can you tell me more about what you mean by that?" He leaned forward now, warming to it. "Her whole life is work, routines, and comfort," he said. "Same job, same habits, same weekends, watching football with her brother, staying in, no drive to do something more." I watched his mouth move as he spoke, trying to recognize the woman he was describing. "She's been at the same firm for years," he continued. "No real ambition to move up, no desire to travel, no hunger for something bigger." I felt strangely detached, like I was watching someone talk about a stranger who happened to be sitting in my seat. Dr. Reynolds glanced at me briefly, then back to him. "And how does that make you feel?" He sighed dramatically, rubbing his face like this was a burden he'd been carrying alone. "Sometimes I look at her sitting on the couch," he said, "and I think, is this it? Is this my whole life?" I noticed then that he still hadn't looked at me. "But," he added quickly, "what choice do I have?" The room went quiet. He shifted in his seat, clearly building toward something. I could feel it coming before he said it. "I'm 34, he continued. "My friends are married. They have kids. My mom keeps asking when I'm giving her grandkids. My feed is just pregnancy announcements and gender reveals." My chest tightened. "I can't wait forever for some perfect, exciting person to show up," he said. "I don't have time to start over." Dr. Reynolds tilted his head slightly. "So you feel like you settled?" He hesitated just for a second. "I mean, yeah," he said. "I guess so." There it was. "I proposed because I'm running out of time," he added. "She's stable. She makes decent money. She won't cheat on me. At this age, that's what matters, right?" I stared at the carpet between my feet, noticing the pattern so I wouldn't look at him. He kept going. "The wedding's already planned," he said. "We have a venue, a photographer. My suit's been ordered. What am I supposed to do? Cancel everything and be single at 35? He laughed nervously, like he was asking a rhetorical question. Dr. Reynolds finally turned to me. "And how does hearing all of this make you feel?" That was the moment. Not when he called me boring. Not when he admitted he'd settled. Not even when he reduced our future to a checklist against his age. It was the moment I realized he wasn't confused. He was convinced. I stood up. "I'd like to end this session," I said calmly. He turned toward me, eyes wide. "What?" "And this engagement," I added. "Wait, what are you doing?" His voice rose, sharp with panic. "You just spent 10 minutes explaining to a stranger that you proposed to me out of fear," I said. "That I'm boring. That I'm a backup plan because you're scared of being alone." "I was being honest," he said quickly. "That's what therapy is for." "Yeah," I replied. "And I'm being honest too. We're done." I reached for my jacket. "You can't just leave," he said, standing now. "We're in the middle of a session." "The session's over," and I said, "So are we." "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he snapped. "You shut down when things get hard." I stopped at the door and turned around. "I'm not shutting down," I said. "I'm listening. You told me exactly how you feel." Dr. Reynolds cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should all take a breath." "No thanks," I said. "I'm good." I walked out. The door closed behind me with a soft click. And just like that, the life we were supposedly building together collapsed. Quietly, cleanly, and beyond repair. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Not because of traffic, but because my body hadn't caught up with what my mind had already decided. My hands rested steady on the steering wheel. My breathing stayed even. If anyone had looked at me through the window of my car, they would have thought I was fine. Inside, everything was reorganizing itself. I didn't cry. Not in the parking lot. Not at a red light. Not when I pulled into my driveway. The shock hadn't turned into pain yet. It was still information. Raw, sharp, newly processed. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and sat down on my couch. The same couch he'd just described in that office. The one he associated with boredom. With settling. With a life he felt trapped in. I stared at the wall across from me for a long time, not dissociating, just letting the silence do its work. My phone buzzed. Once, then again, then again. His name lit up the screen. You can't just leave like that. We need to talk. This is immature. I said I loved you. You're overreacting. I turned the phone face down. Then I called my brother. How'd counseling go? He asked, casual. I ended the engagement. There was a pause, a real one. What? I told him. Word for word. No embellishment. No emotion added. Just facts. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. Holy hell, he said. He actually said that out loud? Yes. In front of a therapist? Yes. Wow. Another pause. You dodged a nuclear missile. I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. What's the plan? He asked. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm just done. Want me to come over? No, I need to sit with this. Okay, he said. I'm here if you need me. After we hung up, I flipped my phone back over. 23 missed calls, 47 texts. I didn't respond. Not because I was being dramatic, not because I wanted leverage, because nothing he could say would change what he'd already admitted. Around 11, I heard the key in the lock. I hadn't told him not to come over. We'd never established that boundary, because I'd never imagined needing it. He walked in slowly, eyes red, face blotchy from crying. He looked like someone who'd rehearsed regret on the drive over. We need to talk, he said quietly. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is, he insisted, sitting beside me. You can't just end a 2-year relationship over one comment. I shifted away from him. It wasn't a comment, I said. It was a confession. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You told a therapist you proposed because you're 34 and running out of time. Which part didn't you mean? I was emotional, he said. I was trying to be honest. Good, I replied. Mission accomplished. He reached for my hand. I stood up. I need you to leave. This is ridiculous, he said. I'm not leaving. We live together. No, I said calmly. I live here. You stay here sometimes. There's a difference. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, is expecting me to marry someone who admitted he settled. Silence stretched between us. Then I held out my hand. Give me your key. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. You're being cold, he said. This isn't like you. This is exactly like me, I replied. I listen, and I believe people when they tell me who they are. His jaw tightened. Slowly, angrily, he pulled the key from his ring and tossed it toward me. It hit my chest and fell to the floor. Fine, he snapped. Don't come crying to me when you realize you made a huge mistake. He grabbed his jacket, stormed out, and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I picked the key up from the floor and set it on the counter. My phone rang again. His mother. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear it yet. I already knew what it would say. Morning came without ceremony. No headache. No tears on my pillow. Just a quiet, heavy awareness settling into my chest the moment I opened my eyes. The kind of awareness that doesn't ask questions anymore. It just accepts. I listened to the silence of my apartment. His shoes were gone. His jacket wasn't draped over the chair. The bathroom counter was missing the extra toothbrush. I checked my phone. One voicemail. His mother. I listened this time. Her voice was tight, controlled, practiced concern wrapped around accusation. You need to fix this, she said. My son is devastated. I don't know what happened in that appointment, but he says you just walked out. That's not how adults handle problems. Call me back. We'll figure this out. I deleted it. At work, I tried to focus on spreadsheets and emails, but my phone kept vibrating. I ignored it until the third unfamiliar number called in a row. I answered. What? I said, already exhausted. It was his best friend. What do you mean, what? He snapped. He's a wreck. He says you ended everything over nothing. Over nothing? He was just being honest in therapy. You freaked out. Did he tell you what he said? A pause. He said he had concerns. Did he tell you he admitted he proposed to me because he's 34 and panicking about time? I asked. That he thinks I'm boring. That he settled because he doesn't believe he can do better before he's too old. Silence. He didn't mention that, he finally said. Right, I replied. So, no, I didn't freak out over nothing. I ended things because my fiancé admitted he doesn't actually want to marry me. He just wants to be married. Well, he's under a lot of pressure, he said. His mom keeps pushing for grandkids. All his friends... Not my problem anymore, I said. You're really throwing away 2 years because he's scared? I'm ending it because he admitted he settled, I said. There's a difference. I hung up and blocked the number. That afternoon, I called a locksmith. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't overshare. My ex has a key, I said. I need the locks changed. Say no more, the man replied. I can be there this afternoon. $180. Worth every cent. At 2 p.m., he installed a new deadbolt and handed me 2 fresh keys. There you go, he said, officially locked out. I thanked him and closed the door behind him, testing the lock twice. That evening, I started packing. I hadn't realized how much of himself he'd spread throughout my space. Clothes, shoes, books, chargers, kitchen gadgets, a fancy mixer he'd bought and barely used, one I'd ended up using every weekend. I stacked everything neatly by the door. I unblocked his number long enough to send one message. Your things are packed. Pick them up Saturday. Between 10 and 12. You and one person. No drama. The reply came immediately. I can't believe you're really doing this. Can we please just talk? This is so cruel. Saturday, 10 to 12, I typed back. Confirm. Fine, he wrote, but this isn't over. It is, I replied. See you Saturday. That night, I slept better than I expected. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I wasn't confused anymore. Saturday came faster than I expected. I woke up before my alarm, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of my apartment like it might tell me how to feel. It didn't. It just existed, steady, indifferent, unchanged. I made coffee. I didn't drink it. Instead, I walked through each room slowly, checking things I already knew were done. His clothes boxed, his shoes paired and taped together, his gadgets wrapped in towels so nothing could be accused of being damaged, everything stacked neatly by the door, just inside the entryway. I wasn't being kind. I was being precise. At 9:45 a.m., I checked the peephole. Nothing yet. At 10:02, there was a knock. Not tentative, not polite, firm enough to announce presence. I opened the door and felt the air shift immediately. He stood there with his eyes red and tired. Behind him, his mother and his best friend. An entourage. Hey, he said quietly. Hey, I replied, already stepping aside just enough to gesture toward the boxes. Your things are here. His mother moved forward before he could speak. We need to talk about this, she said, her voice already tight with authority. No, I said calmly. We need to load boxes and leave. You can't just throw away a relationship like this over one comment, she insisted. It wasn't one comment, I said. It was a confession. His best friend stepped in. He was vulnerable. He was scared. You're supposed to support him, not punish him. Support him settling for me? I asked. Hard pass. He hadn't said anything yet. He just stood there, staring at the boxes like they were evidence of a crime scene. Then he spoke. Where's the mixer? I pointed toward the kitchen counter, the expensive one, the one he'd bought, used twice, then forgotten about. That stays, I said. I'm the one who actually uses it. His mother's face flushed. This is petty. Probably, I replied, still staying. They started loading the boxes, moving back and forth to the car. I stayed in the doorway the entire time, making sure no one stepped past the entryway. Every footstep echoed. Every cardboard scrape sounded louder than it should have. Then his best friend paused. Where's the ring? I didn't flinch, but I felt it anyway. I brought it out, I said. He blinked. What? I walked to the small table by the entryway, opened the little box I'd set there before they arrived, and held it out. His mother's mouth tightened like she'd been gearing up for a fight and didn't like losing the script. His best friend reached for it first. Not you, I said, and shifted my hand slightly. Still calm, still steady. Him. My fiancé stared at it like it was heavier than it should be. You really? He started. Yes, I said. Take it. He took the box from my hand, fingers shaking. For a second, nobody spoke. Then his best friend cleared his throat, like he needed something to argue about and couldn't find it fast enough. They kept loading the last boxes. My fiancé didn't look at me. He just held the ring box too tightly, like it was a verdict. When they finished, his mother grabbed his arm. Come on, she said. He's not worth it. As they walked away, he turned back one last time. You're going to regret this, he said, when you're 40 and alone. I met his eyes. I'll take my chances. The door closed. The new lock clicked into place. I leaned my forehead against the door for a second longer than I meant to. That was the moment the grief finally arrived. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just heavy enough to make standing still feel impossible. I didn't sit on the floor and cry after they left. I stood in my kitchen, hands braced against the counter, staring at the empty space where his things used to be, like my body needed proof that this was real before it could react. The silence felt different now. Not peaceful. Final. My phone buzzed. My brother. How bad was it? He asked. He brought his mother, I said. And his best friend. He exhaled slowly. Of course he did. He asked about the ring. There was a sharp pause on the line. Please tell me you didn't keep it. No, I said. I gave it back. Another pause, shorter this time. Good, he said finally. That ring was never worth carrying forward anyway. I didn't want it, I said. I just wanted it out of my life. After we hung up, I finally allowed myself to sit down. Not collapse, not spiral, just sit. Something inside me shifted, not into anger, but into clarity. Because up until that moment, everything I'd done had been reactive. Ending the engagement, changing the locks, packing his things, defending myself against his family. But now I was done defending. Monday morning, I was called into HR. I knew why before they even said it. My manager sat beside the HR director, looking more confused than concerned. The director opened a folder and adjusted her glasses. "We received a complaint about you over the weekend," she said. "An anonymous report claiming harassment and threatening behavior." I felt a strange calm settle in. "My ex-fiancé," I said. "I ended the engagement last week. He's been contacting me repeatedly." "Can you show us your communication history?" she asked. I didn't argue. I didn't dramatize it. I unlocked my phone and handed it over. Texts, only logistics. Calls, none outgoing. Blocked numbers, documented. "I haven't contacted him outside arranging for him to pick up his belongings," I said. "He's the one who won't stop reaching out." The HR director reviewed everything carefully, then nodded. "Based on what I'm seeing, this appears to be a false complaint," she said. "If anything further happens, document it immediately." My manager walked with me afterward. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and for the first time, I didn't hesitate. "I am." That night, an unfamiliar number texted me. "This is his best friend. You need to stop spreading rumors. He's considering small claims court." I took a screenshot. Then I replied once. "Do not contact me again. Any further messages will be treated as harassment." Block. 2 days later, a letter arrived. It looked official at first glance. Letterhead, formal language, a list of demands, return of kitchen items, compensation for emotional distress, reimbursement for counseling costs. I read it once, then again, and laughed. I sent a photo of the letter to my cousin, who worked as a paralegal. She called me immediately. "This is nonsense," she said. "None of this has standing. Ignore it." I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. Because once someone tries to punish you for leaving, once they try to rewrite the story to protect their ego, you stop questioning yourself. You stop wondering if you were too harsh, too quick, too final. You realize the truth did exactly what it was supposed to do. It freed you. The story didn't end when I returned the ring. It just changed locations. Once it became clear I wasn't coming back, once there was no negotiation left, no leverage left, the narrative around me started shifting in real time. Not privately, publicly. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months began reaching out. Casual messages at first. "Hey, are you okay? I heard things didn't go well at counseling, just wanted to check in." I could feel it underneath the politeness, the version of events they'd been given. So when one of our mutual friends cornered me at a weekend barbecue and asked directly, I didn't soften it. "What actually happened?" he said. "He's telling people you walked out of therapy for no reason." I took a breath, just one. "He told the therapist he proposed to me because he's 34 and panicking about time," I said. "That I'm boring. That he settled because he doesn't think he can do better." The guy's eyebrows shot up. "He said that? Out loud?" "Word for word." He stared at his drink for a second, then shook his head. "Yeah, I don't blame you." That was all it took. The truth didn't need defending. It just needed daylight. Within days, the tone shifted. People who'd been sympathetic to him grew quieter. A few reached out to apologize for believing the first version they heard. His best friend didn't. I got a message late one night from yet another unfamiliar number. "You're ruining his reputation. No one wants to date him now because you're telling people he's desperate." I typed back exactly once. "I'm not telling people anything he didn't say himself." Block. 3 weeks passed. The calls stopped. The messages stopped. Even his mother went quiet. I started to believe, cautiously, that it was finally over. Then, on a Wednesday night, my doorbell rang. 8 p.m. Too late for deliveries. Too deliberate to be accidental. I checked the security camera on my phone. It was him. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the speaker instead. "What do you want?" "Please," he said, voice cracking. "I just need 5 minutes." "No, I need closure." "You got closure in the therapist's office." "This isn't fair," he said. "You won't even hear me out." "I already did," I replied. "You told me exactly how you feel." He sat down on my doorstep. "I'm not leaving," he said. "I will call the police for trespassing." "You wouldn't." I started dialing. He heard the tone through the speaker, stood up immediately. "Fine," he snapped. "You're heartless." He walked back to his car, sat there for a long moment, then drove away. My neighbor texted a few minutes later. "Your ex seemed upset. You okay?" "I'm fine," I replied. "Thanks for checking." The next morning, I woke up lighter. Not because it was painless, but because it was finished. The last attempt came a week later, at a bar where he knew I'd be for a friend's birthday. He appeared out of nowhere, thinner, tired, eyes searching my face like it might give him a different ending. "I was wrong," he said, "about everything." I looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing. There's nothing to talk about, I said. I do love you, he insisted. Not because of my age, because of you. I shook my head. You already told me the truth, I said. And even if I believed you now, the damage is permanent. He started crying. I didn't stay. I went back to my friends. Didn't look over my shoulder. Didn't wonder if he was watching. Later, my brother asked, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. And for the first time, it wasn't something I had to convince myself of. I meant it. About a month and a half after everything collapsed, my life settled into something quieter than before. Not emptier, just clearer. I went on that trip I'd been postponing for years. 1 week alone by the coast. A small rental house with salt in the air and nothing on the agenda except waking up when my body felt like it. Mornings were for walking the beach, afternoons for reading, evenings for eating whatever I felt like without checking if it was exciting enough for anyone else. I didn't think about the wedding. I didn't think about timelines. I didn't think about whether I was behind. I just existed. And that turned out to be enough. When I came home, the apartment felt different, not because it was emptier, but because it finally belonged to me again. I bought a new TV with the money I'd saved by not throwing a wedding for someone who never really wanted me. I rearranged the furniture. I reclaimed Sundays. No one judged how I spent them. I wasn't dating, not out of bitterness, out of respect for myself. I didn't need to rush into being chosen again. I'd already chosen myself, and that turned out to be the harder part. People still had opinions. Some said I overreacted. Some said I should have worked through it. Some said everyone settles eventually. Here's what I learned. Settling isn't love. Fear isn't commitment. And honesty doesn't mean anything if it's only offered when someone thinks you're trapped. If your partner tells you they chose you because time was running out, believe them. Not because they're cruel, but because they're being accurate. You don't owe patience to someone who treats you like a solution instead of a person. I'm not boring. I'm stable. I like my work. I like my routines. I like knowing who I am without performing it for anyone else. And if someone thinks that's not enough, they're free to keep looking. Just not with me. The friends who mattered stayed. The ones who didn't weren't really friends to begin with. And the man who once thought I was something he'd settled for, he became a lesson. A clean one, a permanent one. My life now is quiet, predictable, maybe even boring to the wrong person. And honestly, it's pretty great.